What's up, people? It's James from Lucrative MMA. I'm back to drop some more knowledge on you. Today, we're going to be recapping the whole UFC 264 card from a betting perspective. As you know, I'm a professional sports bettor, so anytime I talk about fights, I'm talking about from a betting perspective. I'll go through the whole card, talk about every single fight, and I'll also talk about all of the bets I had on the card as we go along the fights. If I had a bet on that fight, we'll talk about it. It was a good card. Obviously, it was a bit of a crazy card, capped off with a very strange ending with Conor McGregor breaking his ankle, fibula, tibia, whatever he broke. I think he's just come out of surgery yesterday. He says he's on the way to recovery. He wants to be back in the octagon. We'll touch on all of that later because I probably got a little bit to say about that, as does everyone in the space. But first fight of the night, we'll crack on with it. Zalgas, Zuma Gulov versus Jerome, Rivera. No bets on this fight. Didn't see too much of value on either side. You know, I thought Zalgas should be a big favorite. I thought Jerome should be a big underdog. Didn't really see any value on the line there. Kind of played out how I expected, not in the fact that Zalgas was able to get a first round finish. Didn't really predict the first round finish for him, but definitely thought he'd come away with a win. You know, whether that be by decision, submission or something. I wasn't really predicting the KO. I know a lot of people had the KO. Wasn't really predicting the KO too much. Obviously, Jerome has been KO'd in, I believe it was 2 of his 4 UFC fights. But Zalgas is not really a KO artist. Obviously, he's more of a decision fighter. But I did think that he would potentially wrestle in this fight, which means that he might get a submission. Obviously, he did get a submission without wrestling. It was a standard submission. I think he got a guillotine. Maybe transitioned that headlock series into another choke. But yeah, I just remember him choking him out on the feet. Not much to say about this fight. Jerome Rivera goes 0-4 in the UFC. Will definitely get cut. You know, most of the time, if you go 0-3 in the UFC, you get cut. And he's not losing to the best of the best. You know, he lost to Zalgas. He's not the best fighter. He lost to Francisco Figueiredo, who's definitely not the best fighter. And then he lost to Tyson Nam. And one other fighter is escaping me right now. So, yeah, he will be cut. Jerome Rivera, he will be cut from the UFC now. Look, he's a decent fight. You know, he looks like he's got something about him. He's not the worst fighter of all time. He's just not UFC level at the moment. He's a fairly young guy, so he could, you know, make improvements and come back in the future. As for Zalgas, he is what he is, you know. We've got a large sample size of Zalgas's fights. You know, he's had about 20 fights now. He's had multiple 5-round fights, so we've seen him in extended, minutes. We've seen extended period. And I feel like I've got a decent read on Zalgas's style now. So, you know, I would be able to bet him in the future if the line obviously allows me to. The line didn't allow me to bet the guy at minus 400 at this point. And on the contrary, the line also didn't entice me to bet on the underdog Jerome Rivera, even at plus 350 or whatever he was. So, you know, shout out to anybody who was on Zalgas by sub. Shout out to anyone who was on Zalgas inside the distance, because Jerome Rivera lost 4 fights in the UFC. 3 of them fights now he's been stopped in. So, you know, that probably wasn't a bad look, because it was plus money, pretty decent plus money. I believe it was like plus 300 Zalgas inside the distance. So that would be a good bet. But as for me, no bet. My bet was on the next fight, Brad Tavares versus Omari Akhmedov. This was a good fight. It went basically exactly how I thought it would go. I had an amazing read on this fight in the fact that I thought that Omari would make it close early. Brad would pull away late. Brad would try and get the finish in round 3. Omari would be kind of gassed. Brad wouldn't be able to get the finish because he's not really a finisher. And Omari, I know he does gas in round 3, but he's very tough and he will push through. That's exactly what happened. And I did cash because I bet Brad Tavares to win via decision. I got plus money on that bet, so I turned the minus 170, Brad Tavares, into a plus 150. So pretty big line change there. I just didn't see Brad stopping Omari unless it was late. And, you know, he never looked like anywhere near stopping him in the first 2 rounds. It was only in the 3rd round where Omari started to guess, where you thought Brad might pour it on and get the finish. But 9 times out of 10, he won't get the finish in that circumstance, in my opinion. So obviously, if you have Brad round, I know a lot of people have Brad round 3 because they know Omari's a guesser, and I was contemplating it as well. I was going to do Brad round 3 and then also play the decision line, but I just thought that Omari's tough. Brad's not a finisher. He's probably going to want to stay at range, even if he's got Omari hurt. He's not going to, he's not going to Nico price him in the 3rd round. That's just not his style. And that's exactly what happened. So very happy with the way I read that fight. We took home 1.5 units there, started the card off well. Brad Tavares is a very good fighter, man. He's got very good takedown defense. Omari, wasn't able to really get him down. I think he got him down once. Brad Tavares instantly up to his feet again. I also cashed on Brad Tavares' last fight against Antonio Carlos Jr. We got him at like minus 160, minus 150. A lot of people were on Antonio Carlos Jr. there, but it's just a takedown defense of Brad, who's very, very good. The only time he's been taken down multiple times was against Yoel Romero about 7 years ago. And he kept getting back to his feet there anyway. And we know Yoel Romero, like he's this type of guy who's just chain wrestle, constantly go for wrestling. And he was a national wrestler on the Cuban team. I believe he might have even placed in the Olympics at one point. I believe he definitely went to the Olympics with Cuba. I think he might even have a medal at the Olympics, if I'm not remembering correctly. But either way, it doesn't matter. He's a very, very high-level wrestler. A lot better than Omari Akhmedov, let's put it that way, right? Especially 6-7 years ago, way more athletic, way more of a freak. And Brad Tavares still got back up to his feet. And he's obviously got a lot better in the last 7 years, So you don't really take Brad Tavares down. Doesn't really happen. One of the best takedown defenses in the whole UFC, in my opinion. And it's good when we can get Brad against these fighters who are kind of reliant on the takedown to win minutes against him, like ACJ, like Omari, because more times than not, he's going to win that fight and we can cash on him. And, Brad Tavares is not the type of guy to be like a minus 300 favorite against good fighters, Omari Akhmedov, ACJ. So, we could get him at a good price, especially we played his decision line. Got him a plus money. So I think anyone on Brad Tavares, that was a very good bet. I know this was a split decision. Obviously, completely disagree with that. The first 2 rounds were obviously the rounds where the split decision was could potentially be given. I definitely disagree. I thought Brad 100% won the fight. I actually scored it 30-27 for Brad. But I understand if you want to say 29-28. I don't really understand 29-28 Omari. But I can see why, but I definitely don't agree with it. And my man Z's MMA, shout out to Z, he brought up a good point about this fight. He's always talking about the scoring, which is definitely bad. People want to say that the scoring's not bad. I just really don't understand the argument. The scoring is terrible. The judges, the scoring criteria in general, and then the judges, just everything to do with MMA scoring is like really, really, really bad, and he brought up a point saying that the third round shouldn't be classed the same as the first 2 rounds. And I agree with that. So in his scoring criteria, he says, like, if a fighter clearly wins a fight, it should be, clearly wins a round, it should be a 10-8 round. If a fighter narrowly wins a round, it should be a 10-9 round. And if a fighter gets, almost stops the guy, gets a complete domination, it should be 10-7. Which I think is a very easy but impactful way you could change the scoring criteria right now. You don't have to take these judges and, change the judges, which they seem very reluctant to do. I guess it's hard because of the commissions and stuff. You don't have to put them on, extra training every week. If you just make that slight change to the scoring criteria, I believe we would get a lot better results because the judge that scored that fight to Omari Akhmedov would have actually scored it a draw, right? Or potentially Brad winning. But I don't think it was enough for a 10-7 in the way I'm thinking about it. So, yeah, I think they should definitely change the scoring. There's multiple ways to do it. That's just one way that Z mentioned. But, yeah, man, next fight. And anyone's in the chat, let me know if you're in the chat. We'll have a chat. On my podcast, I can't always go back and forth with everyone, but on these recaps, I can because I don't upload them to my podcast, So it would be annoying for the podcast listeners if I was constantly going back and forth with a chat on the YouTube live stream. If you listen to the podcast later on, right? I'd just be going back and forth with people that you can't even see because you're not watching it on YouTube. So I don't do that on my podcast. But I do it here. So say what's up. Bet IQ, what's up? He's saying warm greetings from sunny Siberia. Wow. Did you thank Herb Dean? Yes, I did. Not personally, but like metaphysically, like through my mind, I mentally thanked him for sure. But we'll get onto that later because I actually just did a poll on my Twitter, and I'll bring that up and I'll talk about that when I get onto it, saying, do you think the stoppage is early or late? So we'll talk about that when I get to it. Anyway, the next fight of the night, Jennifer Maia versus Jessica Ai. So if I could bet on this fight being a greasy split decision, I would have bet on it, right? If it was like minus 200 that this fight was going to a greasy split, I would have max betted it, you know, because it was kind of like obvious that this fight was going to go to a greasy split decision. It's obvious, right? And that kind of means that I should be betting Jessica Ai at plus 160 if I think it's going to go to a greasy split. That's not always how I play the game. Sometimes it's how I play the game. It's not always how I play the game, right? It depends. If she was like plus 250, then yeah, I'm have to play it. But if she's like plus 150, plus 160, plus 170, and I think it's going to go greasy split, I don't always play it, right? So I won't get into the whole philosophy behind why. You know, most people will tell you to always bet that. But I will say that in this regard, that was definitely a good bet. Jessica Ai was clearly the side. You know, it was a close fight. I didn't watch it to a T. It was close, right? So I'm not going to sit here and go, it was a robbery. I know a lot of people are claiming that was a robbery. I don't think I agree with that. It was just so close, you know. I wouldn't call it a robbery because I do see how the fight could be scored either way. But I do lean Jess. So I think Jess should have got the decision. I think a lot of the people calling robbery probably have bets on Jessica Ai. You know, I will say that my guy Luke from Sparring with Reality had a bet on Jessica Ai. Great bet, bro. If you're watching this, well done. But he scored it for Jennifer Maia. That's very good, honest transparency. So definitely shout out to him because it's hard to be honest and transparent when you have a bet on a fighter. But me personally, I actually scored it for Jessica Ai. And a lot of other people did as well. But the thing about that is that I wasn't watching it super closely. So I'm not going to come here and say, you know, I'm not going to be hugely convicted one way or the other. Jennifer Maia, she looked like she had the bigger moments, bigger shots. You know, obviously she was on a back foot the whole fight, which doesn't look good optically. But she looked like she caught Jessica with a lot more cleaner shots. Jessica's tough motherfucker, man. I remember Jessica took a massive knee in like the first round, like a KO knee. She took a knockout knee, you know, like she got the Thai plum, brought her into the knee. And she smiled after. I was like, damn, this girl is tough, man. She's not going away. I know a lot of people kind of not hate on Jessica Ai, but like a little bit take the piss out of her because she's a little bit cringy and stuff, you know, kind of quite cringy, to be honest. But she's a tough girl, man. Probably one of the toughest girls we've seen. So, yeah, I mean, not too much to say about that. It was a greasy split decision. Anyone who bet from a betting perspective, as I said, I think Jessica Ai was the side. Anyone who bet Jessica Ai, well done, good bet. Unlucky result. As we know, you know, it's not all about the bets we make. It's about the reads we have. That's really what it is, right? It's down to the reads. Was the read correct? If the read wasn't correct, then you have to evaluate why the read wasn't correct. If the read was correct or, you know, correct enough, but you lost the bet, don't give a fuck, mate. Listen, don't worry. Just keep reading correctly and the bets will eventually line up to your favor. If you're in it for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then yes, of course you can lose. Anything can happen. You know, I bet Werner Jandiroba to win via submission a couple weeks ago at like plus 300, plus 250, I believe. And she got an armbar, snapped the opponent's arm in half. The opponent's arm, Murata, she snapped her arm, broke her arm. The referee didn't see the arm break. She didn't tap either. The doctor saw the arm break in between rounds. The doctor calls it off. But I don't cash my bet because it's a TKO, even though the armbar broke her arm and the armbar stopped the fight. So, I mean, that was a good read, but we lost the bet. I lost money, right? So it's not all about the bets. Actually, it's nothing to do with winning or losing on your bets. It's only to do about having good or bad reads. Because if you do have good reads, then a byproduct of that is that you will win long term, right? But you just have to stick around long term. Because there's a lot of variance that happens in MMA. So, yeah, shout out to anyone on Jessica. Jennifer Maia probably wasn't a good bet at minus 200. Jennifer Maia by decision might not have been the worst bet in the world. And then also Jessica Eye by decision might not have been the worst bet because it was like plus 250 or something. So yeah, but look, the fight could have gone either way in my opinion. So, you know, here we go. God Mode MMA. What's up, God Mode? I know God Mode. God Mode has an Instagram that I follow. Anybody wants to follow him, he posts MMA pics from his bot, like a computer bot. Shout out you, bro. Josh Lazar saying he thought it was the correct decision. That cut, though, oh, damn. Yeah, let's talk about that cut. Not for too long, but like it was a crazy cut, right? I said, I had a tweet. I was like, now we need to call it. I think a few people tweeted this as well, but I'm pretty sure I tweeted it first. I was like, the cut. Now we're going to have to call her Jessica Third Eye, you know, because it looked like it was perfect, right? It looked like she opened up her third eye right in the middle. Damn. That was that was intense. And she just didn't give a fuck, man. She just carried on, right? So anyway, shout out to both girls. It was a good fight, definitely a good fight, you know. And you have to give some credit to Jennifer Maia. I mean, at the end of the day, she won the fight. You know, Josh thinks she won the fight. Multiple people think she won the fight. Judges, all three judges thought she won the fight. While Jessica was walking her down, constantly there, wouldn't go away, getting hit with massive shots and still wouldn't go away. That's probably one of the worst people to fight in the world. You're hitting them with the biggest shots you can ever throw, and they're still not going away. So for her to, you know, withstand that pressure of Jessica and still win the fight, you have to give some credit to Jennifer Maia, because obviously all the credit is on Jessica Eye because she was underdog and because she had, you know, a big cut and stuff. So shout out to Jennifer Maia, man. She's definitely a great fighter. The next fight, Dricus du Plessis. I said that right? Hope you don't come for me. Versus Trevin Giles. Now, so I didn't have a bet on the Jennifer Maia Jessica Eye fight. The reason being was because I knew it was going to be a greasy split decision. Didn't want to get involved. So I did have a bet on the Plessis fight. I bet the fight not to go to decision. Minus 140, minus 138 we got. So we cashed a unit on that. So it's good. We started the card off, you know, well, we won another unit on that bet. That bet, you know, it was an easy bet for me to make. Plessis had never been to the decision before, and you're giving me minus 140. Obviously, stylistically, I thought both fighters could finish. And actually, that's what we saw in the fight. So this is probably one of the best reads I had on the card, because I actually gave credence to both fighters potentially finishing. I gave Plessis a chance of finishing him on the feet, and then also a chance of him subbing him. And then I also gave Giles a chance of finishing him on feet and also subbing him. I didn't think Giles would sub him, but I thought there was a small chance of him subbing him, you know. So I actually gave both fighters a chance of finishing in every way, you know, which is, it doesn't happen too often. And then obviously when you do get that, then you kind of should be on the under, right? And I actually think that's what we saw in this fight. The only thing I think we didn't see was maybe Giles wouldn't have subbed him, because Plessis looked quite a few levels above Giles on the ground. Now, I will say Giles was able to get out of positions, you know, a couple of times. But at the end of the day, Plessis was very dominant on the ground. And if he wasn't consistently going for submissions over position, he probably could have easily controlled Giles. But he constantly... he got in the mount instead of, you know, staying, like he could have stayed in half guard and just chilled there for a while, right? But he didn't. He went in mount. He started trying to rain down punches. Then he took the back, went for a choke. So I believe that he probably could have controlled Giles if he wanted to. He looked quite dominant on the ground there, and obviously that's why he tried to get to the ground on the second round. So I think it was pretty evident that Plessis definitely could have subbed Giles, and then obviously he knocked him out. So on the Plessis side, it was evident that he could finish the fight anyway. And then on the Giles side, I believe that he hit Dricus du Plessis multiple times, and du Plessis didn't look like he liked getting hit against Giles. He shelled up a couple times. The way he backed away with his hands up, it was very, it wasn't good optically to see, right? He looked a little bit, not scared, but very wary of Giles's power. So I believe we kind of saw that Giles definitely could hurt Plessis on the feet. The only thing I will say is maybe we didn't see Giles could sub Plessis, but, you know, we saw a lot of potential finishing opportunity for both fighters, meaning that, I was very happy with my read on this fight. As I mentioned earlier, it's all about the reads you make. It's not about the bets you make, because obviously the reads will influence the bets, right? If you're making reads and betting something completely different, obviously not. But it's all about the reads you make, not about the bets you make, especially not about the bets you make in the short term. So, yeah, shout out to Duplessis. I believe I was listening to my man Z's MMA recap, and he said he's still on the Dricus Duplessis fade train. So he's going to look to fade him. I think he's a good fighter. I'm not going to necessarily say I'm looking to fade him, but I will say that, potentially the market will overvalue him because he has quite a bit hype now, not major hype like the next fighter we're going to talk about, but he definitely does have hype on his name, and especially getting 2 finishes in a row, a knockout in the first round, knockout in the second round. He's definitely just going to be valued more by the market, which is always what we want to do, right? We kind of want to go against what the market values. If that's, if the line allows us to, right? We want to go against what the market values. What the market overvalues, I should say, not values, because the market may value the correct fighter or the correct, the correct line, but we want to go against what the market overvalues. I can see the market potentially overvaluing Dricus Duplessis, especially if he fights a fighter who is durable, has power, and has good takedown defense. That's not too much to, wish for. There's a lot of fighters out there in his division that do have that. And, these type of fighters could give Dricus a lot of problems, because I do think he's susceptible to being stopped on the feet. And maybe even in transitions in the scrambles and stuff, but definitely do think that his defensive tendencies on the feet don't look amazing. So, great win for Dricus, and I'm excited to see him fight next, because I do think he's a very good fighter. Even though I think the market potentially will overvalue him, I still rate him as a fighter. So, I'll just catch up with the chat real quick, seeing a couple of comments coming in. God mode, no problem, bro. Josh Lazar, you were the first for the Jessica Evil Eye. Hopefully, I should trademark that, right? Nah, the Twitter can have it. My man AJ, anyone who wants to follow another guy who is very honest, very transparent, very good at reading fights, definitely follow AJ MMA Betting. He knows what he's talking about for sure. Guy I really respect in the game, AJ, 100%. Josh is saying Dricus Duplessis is a player for sure. Yes, man. He's very exciting as well, right? Very exciting. Dricus going to be a good fight doesn't go bet every time. Yeah, just like blind betting, right? It's like betting Amari's opponents in round 3, just like blind bet it, because it could always happen. There we go. So Ilia Topuria, this is the fight I was talking about, versus Ryan Hall. So this was my biggest bet on the card. As you can see, the card started out very well for us. It was a good card overall for us. But so another bet I had the only bet I had on this fight was Ilia Topuria to win. I had him in a parlay with a fighter later on in the card, and I'll tell you about that. I just believed Ilia Topuria was, I bet him at minus 225, and I thought that he should be like upwards of minus 400, minus 500. It looked like he should potentially be minus 800, minus 900. Reason being is because I really believe that Ryan Hall was a rolling Imanari leg lock or bust. I really think he's leg lock or bust in this fight. And it showed, right? I know the fight only went on for 4 or 5 minutes, but we've also seen Ryan in extended fights before, and what he showed in the first 5 minutes, he showed in like every single one of his fights before. That hasn't stopped from a leg lock in the first round, right? So it's not like he came out with a completely different game plan this time, and if the fight went into the second or third rounds, he would have completely changed his style. No, he would have done the exact same thing he's done for the first 4 fights, and the 15 minutes in the Gray Maynard fight, and in most other fights he's ever fought, right? So I believe that it was Ilia Topuria was undervalued in this spot, even though he's minus 225. Big favorites can still be undervalued. I just thought in my breakdown, I said it on the site, and anyone who's a member, you can go into the site now. I haven't took it down yet. You can actually check what I said. I said that Ryan Hall was leg lock or bust in this fight. Bust in this fight. And if someone's leg lock or bust, how many times is he going to get that leg lock if he fights Ilia Topuria? Maybe some fighters will get it a lot of times, but against Ilia Topuria, who's a black belt in his own right, I know he talks a big game, but he's not stupid, right? He talks a lot, right? He says that I'm going to knock him out in the first round, which he did, but he also said that, he could start in a 50-50 position on Ryan Hall on the ground, and he'd win the fight. I think he said he's a better grappler than Ryan Hall. So like he talks a lot of stuff, right? But he's actually very clever. So that's why I don't often listen to the outside of the octagon interviews, even weight misses, which we'll talk in a later fighter and stuff. A lot of this stuff I don't take into account, man. What I take into account is what I see on tape, right? 95% of the way I bet is what I see stylistically and statistically, right? I do use stats a little bit, but 95% of what I bet, why I bet, how I bet is what I see on tape, right? 5% goes to that outside of the octagon stuff, 5% goes to if they've changed camps, the mindset of the fighter, like people were talking about Conor McGregor's mindset this time out, the fight went probably even worse for him than the last time. So, like I don't really take any of that talk into account when I'm betting, very slightly, right? And obviously it depends who it is. Some fighters you do take it into account more than others, but on the whole, it's not something I take into account too much because we've seen it not matter. For the last 6 years, I've been betting specifically only on MMA. I've seen it not matter. People come out and say something and they do the complete opposite. Ilia Topuria is talking about he's the better grappler. He can easily grapple with Ryan. Anytime Ryan went to the floor, Ilia ran a mile. He ran away. He didn't want to go in Ryan's guard, and obviously in the end, he did do it. And then he knocked him out, but he did it smart. He didn't do it in the first time. Didn't do it on the second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, sixth time. I don't know how many times Ryan's went down to his back, but I'm guessing about 6, 7, 8 times he did that, right? Potentially even more. So, even though Ilya's talking all this stuff, he was smart, he was patient, and I knew that, right? So if you're listening to Ilia Topuria, his interview talking about he's the better grappler and that, you might stay away from, if you take that into account so much, you might stay away from Ilia. You might be like, whoa, he's talking way too much. He's gassing way too much about Ryan Hall's, he's a better grappler than Ryan Hall. I'm not going to bet him because he's going to go in there. He might go in there and grapple with Ryan Hall, right? So if you take that stuff into account a lot, then you might have been scared off a play of Ilia Topuria, when in fact that is just all talk before the fight, guys. Yeah, you might think he's a better grappler, but it doesn't mean he's going to go in and grapple, right? So not only that it's all talk, and I'll get off this subject now, but because I'm going on a bit of a rant as I usually do, but it's not only that most of that outside of the octagon stuff is all talk, but it's also that it's hard to decipher because, even if Ilia does think he's a better grappler, and he did say that, it doesn't mean he's going to go in there and grapple, So, on the one hand, he might just be talking shit like most of them do. But on the other hand, it's even hard to decipher what they're even saying, right? So, like, it's just so much guesswork. And I just go on what I see in the octagon. What I saw in the octagon was that Sal Rogers dominated Ryan Hall by basically doing nothing, just being smart, being patient, right? A lot of people want to talk about Ryan Hall's never been beaten, or not never been beat, but never been beat in the UFC and stuff. I don't think he's ever been beat in UFC, but he got beat on tough by Sal Rogers. People weren't really talking about that. I mean, that was embarrassing for Ryan Hall in the fact that he could do nothing to Sal Rogers, right? And Sal Rogers is a good fighter, but he's not the best fighter. I think Ilia Topuria is a very, very good fighter, and so it was a very easy bet for me. I put 6.6 units on this bet. I've actually never lost a bet above 5 units. I'm at the moment, I'm 23-0 on bets above 5 units. So that's how confident I was. Anytime I make a play over 5 units, I'm extremely confident. Hence the fact that I've never, ever lost one. 23-0, brother. Alhamdulillah. I'm going for that 29-0, right? So anyway, Ilia Topuria, very good fighter. Very patient fighter, very smart fighter. We saw that in this fight. We've seen that in his Zalal fight. We've seen that in multiple fights now. Specifically the Zalal and this fight, I believe we saw his fight IQ come into play quite a lot. Yeah, dominated Ryan Hall. Didn't play any games that Ryan Hall likes to play and then just ends him with 4 punches, right? So shout out to Ilia. Obviously, he's going to be a big favorite in most of his fights now, so we have to be careful with betting him, but I just thought he should be a bigger favorite in this fight, and obviously that showed. Look, shout out to Ryan Hall as well. He's definitely not an exciting fighter. I mean, he can kind of make fights a bit boring because it's not a great look, flopping to your back every single time. someone gets close. But Ryan Hall, he's still going to leg lock a lot of people in the UFC, right? So, but the the blueprint on how to beat him is out there now. It's been out there for years since Sal Rogers, but no one seemed to know that fight existed because it's not an official fight, right? But the blueprint's definitely in the mainstream now for how to beat him because he's taken his first loss officially under the UFC banner. So next fight we had Michel Pereira versus Nico Price. Now, I had the bet on this fight. Had 2.5 units on the under 2.5. This was kind of annoying because obviously multiple times this fight looked like it would be finished. Obviously never got finished. Thinking back to it, I probably should have played the fight doesn't go the distance because, Nico was coming on late in that third round. And I also predicted Nico to come on late in the third round if he was down the first two rounds. I said it on Z's MMA Fair Play podcast, and I also obviously said it on my breakdown. I said that if Nico is down a couple rounds, he's not going to just allow that to happen. He's going to push the pace. He's going to try and get the finish in the third round, right? And that's exactly what he did. So, thinking back to it, I probably should have played the fight doesn't go to decision. I would have still lost the bet, obviously, but probably should have played that instead of the under 2.5. So that's something that I, need to take into account, and I have taken into account. So it will only help me improve my process in the future. But it was a great fight anyway. Michel Pereira, fairly dominant up until the third round. I will say he looked like he was, cruising. Money line perspective, I don't really like many bets, to be honest. I mean, I guess Michel was the bet, but it's very hard for me to bet a fighter who I thought potentially would gas, not in the fact that he would gas like he did against Tristan Connolly because he's doing backflips, but just gas because he's a big guy, massive. I don't know how he makes 170. He looked a lot bigger than Nico Price, and Nico Price is a very big 170 anyway. But I didn't think he would gas in the fact that, like the Tristan Connolly fight, I just thought Nico would be pushing the pace so much that would probably make Michel gas. And that's exactly what happened, right? So it's hard for me to back money lines when I'm predicting a fighter to gas or slow down a lot, right? It's very hard for me to do that. It's very, very hard for me to do that. It'll have to be like Francis Ngannou or Conor McGregor or someone like that. I have to bet them because I just give a lot of credence to their first and second round finishes. And even then, maybe I just play the first or second round finish. But anyway, yeah, it was. I'm not going to say it was a good bet on either side for the money line. I don't have a big opinion on that. Maybe some people would disagree with me, but yeah, I don't really like any money line plays here. I don't mind the under, but obviously, both guys are tough. So, maybe in hindsight, I shouldn't have went as heavy on it. But at the same time, multiple chances for both guys to finish. Michel Pereira, I believe Michel Pereira could have finished Nico Price in that second round if he would have just postured up and rained down punches consistently. I believe he could have finished him. He did try that at one point, but it was a little bit late because Nico was hurt from that spinning, from that backflip to the face. Nico looked like a little bit damaged. I think if he would have postured up and just started raining down blows, then he could have finished him. Michel definitely, had a lot of chances to finish on the ground. He was in mount for like 3 minutes. And then obviously Nico Price in that third round, if he would have pushed a bit harder and if he wouldn't have shot for the takedowns consistently when he had Michel tired and hurt, then he may have been able to get the finish. So definitely don't hate the read. As I say, we always need to look at the reads, not the bets. Fuck the bets. The bets don't matter. What read did you have on the fight? And obviously you would have made the bet, which is, conducive to your read. So that's why you don't care about the bets. So yeah, good win for Michel. But shout out to Nico Price, heart of a lion, and yeah, we move on. Next fight. I'll just catch up with the chat real quick before I do that. Reggae Panda saying Dricus is on something. Saying he's on them good supplements. Bryce D saying Ryan looked like Chase Hooper against Poirer. Exactly. Reggae Panda took Michel by round 3 or decision to make 1 unit. Have to minimize the risk on a guy like Michel, even if he's the better fighter. Yeah, but Michel by round 3, because Michel was done in round 3, right? So the only person going to finish in round 3 was Nico Price. If anything, Michel had the chance to finish in round 2 because he was in mount for 3 minutes. So Michelle's, usually comes on earlier. At the end of the day, you won there by decision, so well done. Devin Lindner is saying, how was the backflip to head not considered kicking a grounded fighter? Isn't that illegal? Yeah, I mean, because it was such an unorthodox thing, I guess the ref just didn't really notice it. Not sure if the ref noticed it landed on the head as well. I probably should have been though, right? But it was obviously unintentional. So maybe you just don't give it, maybe take him off mount and just basically stand him up again because, it was kicked to the head, but it was definitely unintentional. So maybe you don't take a point. But man, I don't know. The rules set behind when you take a point and stuff is very subjective. It's up to the referee's discretion. But definitely he shouldn't have, they shouldn't have been allowed to have mount because I'm pretty sure it landed on the head, right? So yeah. All right, anyway, the next fight, Max Griffin versus Carlos Condit. Yeah, not much to say about this fight. Max Griffin kind of bossed the fight. He did look tired at points. Carlos looked like he was coming back into it. Max Griffin was always able to land the strikes, right? I didn't look into this fight a lot, guys. I was going to talk. I kind of talked about it a little bit on Fair Play podcast with Z, but man, I just didn't really have no opinion on this fight. Carlos kind of over the hill. Not really about backing Carlos at this stage, especially if he's not fighting like a worn veteran like Court McGee or something, or Matt Brown. And then obviously Max Griffin, don't really like backing him at like minus 200 prices either, in a fight that could potentially be close, and in a fight that his best path to victory would potentially be the takedowns, and I thought that he probably might not even go for them, which he didn't. So yeah, happy I avoided this fight altogether. These are the type of fights I do quite avoid a lot, and I rarely regret me avoiding these type of fights. So yeah, I mean, shout out to Max Griffin. He got a clear win, I guess, but yeah, not too much to say about this fight. I didn't have too much to say about this fight before the fight, and I don't have too much to say about it before after the fight. It's just a fight I don't really care too much about, man. Shout out to Carlos, absolute legend of the game, but yeah, not too much to say about this fight. I will say that Max Griffin, I thought that he could probably take Carlos down, with ease, but he'd never even tried to take him down. But he still was able to box him up on the feet. So, yeah. Let's move on. Sean O'Malley versus Chris Moutinha. Okay, now we can talk a little bit about this fight because this fight was a big talking point. Josh is saying, I love this fight, Carlos versus Griffin, to go the distance. Carlos has a legendary chin. 100%. I saw that as well. Minus 200. I was like, nah. Also don't like it. So. But minus 200 may be in a good bet. If you think about it, how many times did he get stopped? Probably not a lot, man. Carlos looked hurt at one point, but I mean, he only got dropped, right? It doesn't mean you're hurt that bad if you got dropped. Yeah. Sean O'Malley versus Chris Moutinha. Okay, so obviously, Sean O'Malley just set records in this fight. It's funny because, I had a bet on this fight. I had Sean O'Malley to win inside the distance, right? It's like minus 300. When this fight happened, I was like, through the whole fight, I'm like, this is crazy. The corner should throw in the towel. This is really bad, damaging for Chris. Anyway, gets to the last round, and I'm like, damn, Chris is so tough. 30 seconds left. I'm basically ripping up my ticket. I'm thinking I lost. And then Herb stops the fight, I'm like, wow, I can't believe he stopped the fight. So, my instant reaction is like, wow, I'm so lucky. I got bailed out, thank you, Herb, right? And obviously, the longer the time has surpassed since that fight, now my opinion's changing. Now I'm thinking that, wait, that Herb stoppage, because at the moment, when it happened, I'm like, wow, that's such an early stoppage, Now my opinion is that was a disgustingly late stoppage, right? So I did a poll on Twitter earlier because I wanted to see other people's opinions. And anyone in the chat, let me know. Do you think it's an early stoppage or do you think it's a late stoppage? Do you think it's both? Yeah, I kind of think it's, well, actually, I don't know. I've completely changed. But, potentially it could be both, right? But that's kind of the easy way out. That's the easy thing to say. Because obviously, 30 seconds left, let him go. So, but kind of want to know if you think it's an early stoppage or a late stoppage. So let me know. I will just go on my Twitter because I want to see if there's been any update. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, you can go to my Twitter and you can see the poll I did. I asked everyone whether they think the O'Malley-Moutinho stoppage was early or late. And the comments were overwhelmingly saying it was a late stoppage. So let me just have a look. I'll tell you the percentage and stuff. And then I'll tell you the comments. So 54% are saying late stoppage, and then 45% are saying early stoppage. But if you look at the comments, everybody is saying late stoppage. And so, you know, the people saying there's a late stoppage, there's lots of rationale behind that. People saying early stoppage, it's hard to rationalize that, right? The only thing you can say is that there's 30 seconds. If you're on the side that it's an early stoppage, the only thing you can really say is like, it's 30 seconds left. You should let him continue for 30 seconds for his pride, right? But then if you want to combat that, then you have to say that, yeah, there was 30 seconds left, and he already did take 14 minutes and 30 seconds of punishment. But I stress people to not underestimate the last 30 seconds of the fight, because that could be the difference between death and survival, you know, death and life. And some of you listening are probably thinking, he's being over dramatic, death and life. I'm not being over dramatic, guys, not with this type of head punishment. So I don't know if you guys watch only MMA or watch boxing as well. I watch boxing as well, right? And I've seen it multiple times before. People die from boxing because of the repeated head trauma, but they're not getting KO'd unconscious when they die. They're conscious. They're taking the punches. They die later on when they go to hospital from bleeding on the brain. They go into comas. You know, whether they die or not, they go into comas or they have bad brain damage. It's happened to multiple fighters. Jared McLennan back in the day, it happened. Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, they've both had opponents who they've had gave them permanent brain damage from repeated head trauma. It wasn't from a big KO. Big KOs are a lot more safer than repeated head trauma, which is kind of crazy, right? You see it in Ngannou knockout, you think that's terrible. In reality, Ngannou knockout and then Moutinho 300 strikes setting a bantamweight record is actually a lot worse, right? And obviously the weight difference, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if they're the same weight. I've seen it with Chris Eubank Jr., actually, even Chris Eubank's son, who Chris Eubank, had that fight, gave his opponent brain damage. Chris Eubank's son had a fight with Nick Blackwell a while ago, about 4 years ago. You can Google it. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Nick Blackwell. You can Google Gerald McLennan. And basically, Chris Eubank Jr. was doing what Sean O'Malley did to Chris Moutinho, right? And I want to give some background on this because a lot of people don't really understand the implications of repeated head trauma. They think MMA, they watch it, it's a good sport. They don't understand that it could actually lead to death and it can actually lead to permanent brain damage and coma and stuff like this. This is a serious sport. It's not to be played with, right? And shout out to my man Liam Picks Fights, because he mentioned another fight, Calvin Kattar versus Max Holloway, which should have been stopped multiple times, And this is serious stuff, because if you understand the implications of repeated head trauma, then you can kind of see it from a different lens, right? And I didn't really think about this till after the fight, but, I was going to mention a Nick Blackwell fight. So Chris Eubank Jr. is a boxer, right, from England. He fought Nick Blackwell and basically did what Sean O'Malley did, right? He was just teeing off, but he couldn't drop him. Sean O'Malley obviously did drop him in the first round, but other than that, he couldn't really drop him, right? And that's what happened with Nick Blackwell, Chris Eubank Jr. So Chris Eubank Jr. was just teeing off him for 10 rounds. I think finally the fight got stopped in the 10th round, but Nick Blackwell never went down, right? Nick Blackwell was fine. I think he was even protesting a stoppage. He's like, no, that was a bad stoppage. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he's fine. He does I don't know if he does a post-fight interview, but anyway, he's fine. He goes back to his corner, boom, 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 take off the gloves, goes to the locker room. Anyway, at some point later that day, he passes out, right? Unconscious. After the fight, whether it's 10 minutes, 2 hours, it was after the fight, considerable amount of time after the fight, 10 minutes to 2 hours, whatever it was. He gets transported to hospital. He's in a coma. He's in a coma for however long. Doctors are saying, look, he could die. Maybe he's never going to come out of a coma. You know, this wasn't an induced coma. He went into a coma himself. So whatever, potential death for Nick Blackwell, you know, and thank God he didn't die. Anyway, he comes out of it and he's fine after that. Actually, he goes and spars months later, and fact check me on this, but I believe this happened as well. He goes to spar months later, which is stupid, right? And he gets put into another coma. So there's still underlying effects. So I'm just wanted to bring that whole, you know, background to basically talk about how dangerous repeated head trauma is. Now, it's mainly in boxing. The reason is because, you know, there's bigger gloves, so there's less knockouts. So the chance for repeated head trauma as opposed to one-punch KOs is a lot higher, right? But at the end of the day, it's still head trauma to the brain, right? So I just wanted to give that background. So because I know stuff like that, and I've seen it happen before in boxing, my opinion now is that it was actually a late stoppage. But also, it was a bad stoppage, right? Whether it was late or early, it was still bad, because if it was late, if you think it was late, which a lot of people seem to think, he should have been stopped way earlier, right? And then if it was early, then I guess you think he should have just let it go for another 30 seconds. So whatever you think, it was bad, and that is my opinion. But you know, at the same time, look, that extra 30 seconds could have done terrible damage, right? You will never know, right? I'll never know, you'll never know. But there is a potential that the extra 30 seconds, O'Malley was teeing off at that point. It wasn't like, you know, O'Malley was teeing off at that point a little bit more than he was doing in a lot of the other rounds, you know, because he came with the uppercut and he was throwing other strikes. Herb Dean was like, defend yourself, you know. So it was teeing off a little bit more. So, and he actually landed more strikes in that third round than he did in the first and second round. So, you know, I just wanted to give that little bit of background to kind of like try and educate some people on repeated head trauma, if some people didn't know like the implications of that in boxing and MMA. But yeah, man, I think it should have been stopped a lot earlier. Yeah. So other than that, I don't have too much to say. Obviously, if we talk about the fight, people say that, you know, O'Malley looked tired and stuff, but O'Malley landed more strikes in round 3 than in round 1 and 2. So I don't think he's tired. People want to say that, you know, that was a bad look for O'Malley. I mean, not really. I mean, the guy just like, it's probably the worst. Like, I think it's the most one-sided fight I've ever seen. Yeah, I'd say it's the most one-sided fight I've ever seen. You know, you can talk about, obviously, we're not talking about early KOs. You can talk about like Khabib versus Michael Johnson or something. Obviously, that was really one-sided, right? Michael Johnson did catch him, but I don't know. I've never seen anyone land that many strikes on a fighter with nothing coming back, because nothing came back. Even in the Max Holloway Calvin Kattar fight, Calvin Kattar at times did land, you know, not a lot, but like I think that potentially was the most one-sided fight in recent memory, anyway, I've ever seen. So, you know, O'Malley didn't do anything wrong there. Look, maybe he should have knocked him out, but he didn't do anything wrong there. I will say though, in regards to my bet, I don't regret my bet at all, because again, we have to look at the reads. Now, did I get bailed out because I thought it was going to go 30 seconds? Yes. Should it have been stopped way earlier? Yes. But then also, forget the bet, forget what happened in the fight. Look at the read, right? I think from watching tape, you could not tell that Chris would be able to last that long. It was basically impossible to tell that. Chris doesn't last. You know, I've seen Chris get dropped like 3 separate occasions, right? By fighters who are not Sean O'Malley, right? Fighters who would not knock out Thomas Almeida, who would not drop Thomas Almeida 3-4 times. I've also seen Chris Moutinho gas out, right? So like the round 3 is coming on strong, calling Sean a pussy. I think it's basically impossible from tape, impossible to think Chris was gonna last. Now, if you want to bet Sean O'Malley by decision at like plus 600, yeah, I'm sure some people done that, right? Not every single person in the world didn't bet Sean O'Malley inside the distance. Some people would have done that, but that's more of just, oh yeah, you see a big number and you just bet it just because maybe he could last, right? But if you actually do your research and watch tape, you would never believe he would be able to last, right? So I'm not unhappy with my read, because Chris looked completely different in the durability and cardio factor than we've ever seen before, ever. Now, he was fighting at 135. He doesn't usually fight at 135. So maybe that's the reason why he could take more, right? But a lot of times, if you move up in weight, they're bigger fighters, you might get stopped easier. So it's kind of hard to read that. But shout out to Sean. Definitely did his thing. In regards to my bet, you know, at the time of the stoppage, I was like, oh my God, I hate that bet. But actually, when I look back on it, it was actually the obvious bet to make from what we saw on tape. So happy with that bet, even at minus 300. Did I get bailed out? 100%. I said I was going to send Herb some units. Was it a bad stoppage? I think it was an extremely late stoppage. Argument for stopping it at any point through that fight, especially after round one. I guess you can kind of tell that Chris wasn't going to win that fight. But then again, you never know. Things do happen. He could have tired O'Malley out late, so maybe Herb was giving him that chance. But, you know, I think he definitely did, he did a lot better than a lot of people would think in the fact that, you know, he lasted at least. So he still won over fans. Whether he made it to decision or not, he still won over fans. And he can protest that was a bad decision. So I think Herb did the right thing by stopping it. I think if he wouldn't have stopped it, it probably would have been a worse look. You know, at least he did stop it. He can say, look, I did stop the fight, right? I did try and save the fighter. So, yeah, not much to say. I'm not going to repeat all the comments on my post, but if you do want to go and check my Twitter poll, I do kind of agree with like all the comments underneath there, because basically everyone's saying what I just said in the last 10 minutes, that we need to look after fighters' health. So anyway, the next fight, Irene Aldana. I'll just check the comments before. BP is skipping this event and started taping for the TJ versus Sandhagen card. You skipped this event. TJ Sandhagen is, when is that? Next weekend, right? No, the weekend after, right? He's all over TJ. Oh, interesting. I saw you had an amazing card this past weekend. Yep, it's been a great year so far. Bet IQ saying bad stoppage. It definitely was a bad stoppage, but was it early or late? That's what we're saying. Kristen Rodriguez, the fight should stop if someone has over 200 significant strikes in a 3-round fight. Yeah. It was crazy, man. Reggae saying he doesn't know. It's a bad stoppage. Either protect the fighter or don't. Should have checked him at end of round one. Yeah, exactly. It definitely was a bad stoppage. Early, late. Stop the fight after round one. Yeah, I agree. Definitely a bad stoppage, boys. 100%. Reggae saying this is where one fight interviews helped. O'Malley knew how tough Chris was and predicting a round 2 KO. Yeah, but he done the most damage in round one. So he predicted a round 2 KO, but he done the most damage in round one. If anything, it should have been stopped at round one. It should have been a first round stoppage, right? So I don't think the fight interview helped, because you're saying O'Malley knew how tough Chris was, but O'Malley only watched one fight, right? So O'Malley said himself he only did tape on one fight. I taped 4 of Chris's fights. So I knew more than O'Malley knew. And Chris isn't that tough. I know he looked crazy tough in this fight. He is tough, but if you watch his other fights, he's gassed out. He's been stopped. I think he's been stopped in like 3 of his 4 losses. He's got dropped multiple times. So O'Malley, says one thing, but O'Malley only watched one fight. I watched 4 fights. So I knew a hell of a lot more than O'Malley in this fight. So again, you shouldn't really listen to fighters' interviews, in my opinion. Even though this time, potentially it worked out, even though it didn't, because he didn't get a round 2 KO. Maybe it worked out, but O'Malley, he was wrong, right? He was wrong because he didn't watch as much as me or anyone else who does tape. So I actually disagree with that. Just because he only watched one fight, All right, the next fight is Irene Aldana versus Yana Kunitskaya. So I had 2 units on Irene Aldana here, minus 125. Obviously, she got a first round finish, so that was good for me. Obviously, in hindsight, kind of should have put more on Irene Aldana, because I did think that she'd be able to defend the cage control that Yana would do not easily. I just did think that she would be able to defend it, and then she would be able to steal rounds by hurting Yana or optically looking better to the judges. And that's what happened. So kind of annoyed I didn't go more because I thought she would be fucked on the feet. I'm talking about Yana. I thought she would be fucked on the feet, and obviously she was. And if you go back and look at that KO, it was so brutal. Irene Aldana, she fakes the right hand, and then she knows that Yana's gonna. I saw a post on Twitter, which I agree with. She knows that Yana is going to react to her feints by rushing in, because that's what she does. You throw a punch, she just rushes in and tries to grab you, right? So she knew that, right, after like 3-4 minutes. So what she does is she fakes the right hand, and then Yana comes rushing in with her hands down, and as she fakes the right hand, she throws the left hook around the outside. And obviously Yana's hands down, rushing in at that point, gets caught, left hook, huge punch, drops her to the ground, smashes her, bomb, 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 KO. Easy money, cash to 1.6 units, cha-ching. So, yeah, man, shout out to Irene. She's a very, very good fighter. Yana is going to be good against certain fighters, but there's certain fighters she's going to look really bad against because, in my opinion, she's not a great fighter, but her style is going to make her win a lot of fights because she's so strong, and some fighters just can't keep her off them because they're not strong enough and they don't have the striking prowess to do that. So even though I don't think her game is very good, it is very good to beat a lot of fighters just because of how it's structured, you know. So I think she's going to be a good fighter to bet going forward, because I believe now I know her style, whereas I didn't really know her style, or I didn't have a good read on it. Now I think I've got a good read on it. And I like Aldana. She's a great fighter, Mexican fighter. She's got a decent future in this game because she's definitely a well put together fighter. Very, very good takedown defense, but then also very, very good striking, which obviously, you know, going to make you good. She did miss weight, as BP's saying. Irene missing weight baited people to bet Yana. Yeah, was all over Irene in that spot. Good bet, mate. Irene is a babe. So yeah, this was a huge thing, right? A lot of people didn't bet. You know, a lot of my members were messaging me, yo, like, are we going to cash out our bet on Irene now? She missed weight. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know. I just woke up, like, because I saw I never get the weigh-ins, the ceremonial weigh-ins, because I'm always asleep because I live in New Zealand. They do them during the night. So I was like, oh, let me just see the weigh-in, and then I will check it. Now, this is another little nugget for some people. I only really take the weigh-ins into account if someone looks really terrible. Irene looks sweet, man. She looked a little bit bad, I guess. But, you know, she didn't miss weight by like half a pound, where she's probably sucked herself all the way down. She missed weight by 3.5 pounds, which kind of tells you that even though she said that this didn't happen, who knows? This, you know, the majority of the time, if someone misses weight by 3 pounds, 4 pounds, then basically they stopped cutting weight early because they knew they wouldn't make it and they didn't want to deplete their body. Whether she did that or not, I don't know. She said she didn't. She said she had women's problems, etc., etc., etc. But anyway, on the scale, she didn't look bad, and I was like, no way am I betting again. No way am I cashing out my bet. She looked fine, you know. If anything, it's a good thing that she has a bit more weight, right? She loses her purse, but I don't lose anything on a money line. So I actually said in my breakdown, again, members, you can go listen to the breakdown if you are a member on my members area of the website. You can check this. I said that if Irene goes to underdog odds, I'm going to put more money on her, you know, and that was after the weigh-in. So yeah, these weigh-in things are overblown a lot of the time. Don't take them into account too much, guys, unless they look really terrible. That's all I'll say on that. Tai Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy. This was my worst bet of the night. Oh, God, I have to go through this one. Don't really kind of want to skip this one, but I'll tell you what it was. Tai Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy. I had the over 1.5 rounds at minus 175. Look, I will say that I didn't think Greg Hardy would come out like an absolute madman and try and point to the middle of the octagon and stand and bang with Tai Tuivasa. Are you fucking nuts? So, you know, shout out to my man Clint on the Die Hard MMA podcast. He did say that it's not your fault that the bet lost. It's Greg Hardy's fault. You know, and I will say that it's very hard to predict fighters' game plans. You know, we've seen Greg Hardy stay on the outside in a lot of his fights against high-level competition. Obviously, he used to bum rush these people, Ben Sassoli and stuff, when they're lower level. But we've seen him stay to the outside multiple times in his fights. Marcin Tybura, he was very calculated, throwing body shots, stepping back, You know, in this one, he's like pointing to the ground. Let's just stand in the middle and bang. That's why you get knocked out, bro. At the end of the day, that's why you got knocked out. You know what I mean? Because you stood in the middle of the octagon and you stand and bang. Now, could you have knocked him out? Yeah, you almost did, right? Well, not almost knocked him out, but you definitely hurt him. So there was definitely a chance of you getting the finish. But at the end of the day, man, like that obviously wasn't a good game plan because you got knocked out, right? So it's very hard to predict fighters' game plans, you know. I know the bet looks absolutely terrible, and I'm not proud of the bet, and it is a bad bet. I'm saying it's a bad bet. But I have to tell you my full thoughts, and that's what I'll do. If Greg Hardy doesn't come out here with literally a stand and bang, because he points to the octagon, stand and bang game plan, then, you know, who knows how that fight goes? Maybe that fight is on the outside, which is what I predicted. The fight would be a little bit on the outside after they had felt each other's power. Obviously, they only had to feel each other's power one time before the fight was over. But yeah, definitely a bad bet. Don't like the bet, but I will say that, you know, if Greg Hardy comes out a different way, then who knows what we get. We'll never know because it finished within a minute. Shout out to Ty, absolute legend. How can you not love Ty? One thing that pissed me off in this fight was that after Ty does the shoey, he goes and does like a couple of shoeys. Someone puts Dustin Poirier's hot sauce in the shoey. Like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, the guy's just got a good knockout. Like, that annoyed me, you know? Like, why are you putting hot sauce in a shoey? You know what I mean? That's not funny. Like, the guy's all laughing with the hot sauce, like, and like Ty's like tapping his mouth, like, what the fuck did you do, man? Like, yeah, you can have a laugh on that, you know what I mean? Like, but don't put a bunch of hot sauce in a shoe, man. Like, what an idiot. Anyway, moving on. That annoyed me. I don't know why. I'm like, why are you doing that to the guy, man? Like, he's having fun with a shoe. You don't chuck loads of fucking hot sauce in there. Anyway, yeah, great knockout by Ty. I love Ty, man. Like, he's really electric in the crowd. That was a crazy 1 minute walk back, you know, when the camera was following him from after the octagon, you know, does the shoey. He's like spudding loads of people, you know, pounding loads of people on the way. People are throwing beer at him. He's drinking beer from people that are like dropping beer down outside of the from the stands and stuff. Beer's just getting thrown at him. People are putting hot sauce in the shoey. People are giving him shoes to do shoey. Masvidal comes out of nowhere. It's like a crazy 1 minute scene. Is walk back to you know, backstage and stuff. Yeah, man. So yeah, I guess going forward, Greg Hardy's probably gonna learn not to stand and bang, and then Tai Tuivasa, we know what we're getting with him, man. He's a brawler, you know. So the next fight, co-main event, Gilbert Burns versus Stephen Thompson. Didn't have a bet on this. Kind of regret not playing Gilbert. Obviously, I will. He's underdog and he won the fight. So, you know, you're always going to regret that. But I just didn't have a great read on this fight, you know. I would have played Gilbert if I gave more credence to Gilbert's run in, you know, welterweight. I didn't think he, like, fought any top-level strikers, top-level welterweight strikers like Stephen Thompson, you know. For example, obviously he beat Tyron Woodley. That doesn't mean much these days, you know. He's not even in the UFC anymore. He's fighting Jake Paul. I mean, I don't have to go into the fall from grace Tyron had. So he beat Tyron and he beat Damian Maia, which also doesn't mean too much these days. Damian's like 40 years old, right? So that was really the only fight, you know, the only meaningful fights he's had at welterweight. So I wasn't jumping to bet Gilbert Burns, you know, because I hadn't really seen him proven against a top-level fighter at welterweight, in my opinion. Definitely not someone like Stephen Thompson. And on the other hand, I'm not betting Stephen Thompson because, in my opinion, Gilbert Burns get him down to the ground once, it's either a round or the fight. And that's what we saw. When Gilbert Burns got him down, basically the round ended. You know, Stephen done well to, like, not get that hurt on the ground, but he basically lost a round there. And Gilbert Burns basically needed 2 takedowns to win the whole fight. So that's what I thought. And that's why I didn't bet Stephen. And I've told you the reasons I didn't bet Gilbert. So look, not a huge regret. When I speak about it out loud, like here, I actually kind of changing my opinion. Not a massive regret. Obviously, you always want to be on Gilbert, especially if you do think that one takedown, it could be over. But at the same time, because of his lack of high-level competition in the welterweight, you know, I also not super regretful I didn't bet Gilbert. But anyone who bet Gilbert, definitely a great bet. Shout out to you who bet Gilbert. I guess it was kind of annoying. I did want to see Thompson win. Reason being is because Kamaru Usman could have had a new, a new title challenger, someone who he hasn't fought before. But it wasn't to be. Gilbert Burns done his thing. Stephen Thompson probably never getting a shot at the title again now. 37 years old. Probably going to go on to lose a couple more fights when he comes back. But love Stephen, love Gilbert, is what it is. Next fight. Poirer versus Conor McGregor. All right, I don't want to go too in-depth on this. I guess this has been done to death. But obviously I have to say my part. I will say I'm kind of just glad that we're past this McGregor fight week because Twitter was just a madhouse. Obviously I'm on Twitter. I'm active on Twitter. Not as active as I once was potentially, but yeah, like people just turned into absolute idiots when Conor McGregor's fighting. Either they love him and they're just completely idiotic, or either they hate him and they're just completely idiotic. People are obsessed with this guy. I love Conor McGregor. Obviously, I will say that like some of the stuff he's done lately, I can't really get behind, and I guess I'll get into that now. But just in general, I do like Conor McGregor. But yeah, Twitter just turns into a stupid place, man. People just lose their minds when this dude's fighting, And I did a post on that before the fight. I was like, I haven't seen any rational takes on this. People are either hating Conor McGregor or people are either loving Conor McGregor. So, and because of that, then they don't have irrational takes. So, yeah. So just let's talk about the fight. So any bets I had on this fight? Yeah, I had Dustin Poirer. I had one unit on him at plus 100. Obviously, think he should have bet a bit more on now. I couldn't believe I got Dustin Poirer underdog odds. That's absolutely like crazy. I was very shocked that Dustin Poirer was an underdog when I bet it. I bet it like 2 months ago because I saw Dustin Poirer was an underdog, and I'm like, let me lock this in ASAP because I don't think he's going to be an underdog for long. And I was right. Money did come in on Dustin. He was like the minus 140 favorite, rightly so. Should have been a bigger favorite, obviously, from what we've seen. But I kind of was a little bit scared. I did think McGregor would make technical adjustments, and so I didn't put any more on him. But I could still easily see Dustin to be a 55, 60% favorite. So obviously, I left the bet standing. Wish I put more on now. I do think Conor's done at this level. Obviously not, top 10 level. He could probably beat some fighters, but I do think he's done at top 5 level now. Don't think he beat many top 5 lightweights. He's obviously dangerous in that first round. But what I've seen with Conor now is that it's kind of like his physical attributes are just not there anymore. That's what I kind of a realization I've had in the last 24 hours thinking about this fight is that it's not so much the technical adjustments because he made loads of technical adjustments in this fight. He opened up with a spinning back kick. And when he opened up with that spinning back kick, I'm like, yes, it's like the old Conor's back, Then he threw some teep kicks. I'm like, this is what we want, no boxing heavy stance. You want your teep kicks. You need to keep that range. But his physical attributes are not really there anymore. So it's not really technical adjustments because everybody in this fight, including myself, kind of, was talking about the technical adjustments, right? That was the whole narrative. I didn't see one person talk about the physical, right? Which is what I believe is kind of gone on Conor now. So when I'm talking about the physical, I'm talking about the power. The power that he had at 145 is not the same power that he's had at 155, right? Or at 170, of course, right? Like, yes, he dropped Nate Diaz, but they were flash knockdowns. Nate Diaz was never hurt in that fight. Obviously, look, Conor McGregor hits fucking hard. He doesn't hit featherweight hard, right? He doesn't hit one punch Aldo. He doesn't hit one punch Dustin Poirer. He doesn't brutalize Mendes power. Doesn't have brutalized Mendes power. He doesn't have one punch Poirer power. Doesn't have one punch Aldo power. Doesn't have free punch uppercut Brimage power. Doesn't have Diego Brandao. All of this run at heavyweight. He does not have that power anymore. Not at this high weight class. Obviously, he hits hard, but the fighters at these higher weight classes are able to take his power better. So the power is not the same as it used to be when we talk about 145, right? The speed is nowhere near the same. He's nowhere near as fast as he used to be. Poirier is countering him multiple times. He used to be so fast, man, at featherweight. That hook kick that he opened up against Poirier was just like, crazy, so fast. He was darting in and out on Aldo with the jabs. He's not that fast at this weight class anymore, right? Also, his durability has seemed to have gone down. He got knocked out by Dustin Poirier, never so much as hurt from a punch at featherweight. And he took some heavy punches. He took punches from Mendes, extremely heavy punches. He took heavy punches from Poirier in the first fight at featherweight. So, and obviously now his leg just snaps. So his durability is going. You know, he got dropped by Khabib with an overhand right. His durability is not the same as it used to be. His cardio, in my opinion, was better at 145. We've seen him go 3 rounds at, obviously against Holloway. Obviously, Mendes, he was tired, very tired, but he still managed to get the finish in the second round. So it looks like, you know, in them 2 fights when he's seen him extended, potentially his cardio is even worse. So I think it's just that McGregor's physical attributes are like heavily diminished at these higher weight classes than it used to be. So it's not so much the technical point, you know. And I thought that was just a very, very interesting way of looking at the fight that I haven't really seen many people talk about, you know. So yeah, that's kind of my read on that whole situation. And then obviously, yeah, Poirier, pretty dominant by Dustin Poirier in that fight. A lot more dominant than the rematch, the second fight. Let's put it that way. McGregor was actually winning the rematch up until the stoppage. Poirier was definitely winning the trilogy. Yeah, so the striking exchanges were close early, but Poirier was getting the better of the boxing. He was landing the more meaningful shots to the face. Obviously, Conor McGregor had the diversity of strike edge. You know, spinning back kick, push kick, but Poirier definitely had the more impactful strikes, and he was definitely landing more in boxing range. He landed a couple uppercuts, or one uppercut specifically. He landed a straight right, which was solid. So Poirier was edging the striking exchanges, in my opinion. Definitely the more powerful, the more impactful, the more meaningful, the more important striking exchanges were landed by Poirier. And then Conor actually goes in for the clinch because of the striking, because he's getting maybe not hurt, but he's definitely getting impacted. Poirier's pushing McGregor back with the strikes. McGregor goes in for the takedown, and then obviously Poirier goes for the Poirier then reverses McGregor, puts him on the cage, you know, goes for the takedown. Not really a takedown, but he's kind of like just grinding him up against the cage. And then what happens? And then McGregor pulls for the guillotine, which is kind of crazy. You know, McGregor's talking about submissions don't count, and then he pulls guillotine. It's strange look from McGregor. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's nothing wrong with pulling. No, there is something wrong with pulling guillotine, actually. You shouldn't do that, because then if it misses, you're on bottom, you know, unless you're someone like, I don't know, Figueiredo or something. Don't pull guillotine. But what I was going to say is that it kind of just shows that all of that talk is basically just talk, right? You know, talking about submissions don't matter. And then, you know, talking about people fight me scared by kicking my leg. And that's literally how he won the second Diaz fight. And that is what he was doing straight away to Poirier. And then also talking about submissions. Submissions don't count. And then you go for a submission. Obviously, it's just all talk, you know, and we know that anyway. But yeah, so he goes for the submission. Poirier, you know, easily gets out of it. He puts his feet on the cage, so that's cheating there. Gets out of it. It's definitely not good that Poirier cheated, but McGregor was cheating later in the fight, so I guess it's even. Would he have got the submission if Poirier didn't put his feet in the fence? Probably not. The cage was in the way. He couldn't wrap his leg around his body. Yeah, we've never seen McGregor get a guillotine in his life. Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, Poirier gets on top, lands heavy shots. McGregor did throw shots back, had a couple good up kicks, couple good elbows, but, you know, it was pure domination by Poirier on top. Obviously, it kind of looked like that Khabib fight where Khabib was just raining down punches. Poirier, you know, basically did the same. You know, he was landed huge elbows, huge punches. And then McGregor gets up because Poirier turns to... The only reason McGregor got up, Poirier turns to Herb and says, yo, he's cheating, because McGregor has got his fingers inside of Poirier's gloves, which is illegal, pulling the gloves down while up kicking him. You can see it clearly on the video. So Poirier turns around, which was stupid, and tells Herb, yo, he's cheating. And then McGregor takes that opportunity to jump up. Well done to McGregor. That's what you should do. And then obviously they both miss a strike. McGregor steps back and his ankle snaps, which is brutal. McGregor's super tough because he didn't even moan at all, you know. Obviously, then Poirer comes in, goes for the finish. The fight stops. The round stops, and then the fight stops. But yeah, man, not much to say. But I will say that I really hope Conor retires, but I don't think he will do. You know, he's already talking about that was an illegitimate win. He's already posting videos of him landing the elbows on the bottom, basically, you know, trying to suggest that I landed shots on you as well. Like, I don't know, man. Like, unfortunately, McGregor is, you know, nowhere near where he used to be, and he should retire now. It's not like he can't compete at the top 10 level, but the thing is, he can't compete with the champions. You know, he's got dominated by Poirer in that fight, in my opinion. I know people want to kind of say that he didn't, but I think it's just delusion, in my opinion. Like, we saw what happened. Forget the ankle break. That came right at the end of the fight. Like, he got beat in the striking exchanges. Then he got taken down. Like, I don't know, man. It's crazy for me that people still can't see like how done McGregor is now. And obviously I saw it before the fight because I bet on Dustin Poirer, you know. So look, I bet on McGregor in the rematch inside the distance. And what I saw in that fight, I was astounded by. But obviously I'm a sports bettor, right? So even though I like McGregor, I have to remove my love for a fighter and look at it objectively. And objectively, McGregor is not the same as he used to be. He's nowhere near the same as he used to be. He's not on that high level anymore. He's not on the title level anymore. He'll get beat by these guys at the top, right? He obviously could always land a 1-2, but he's basically 1-2 or, you know, not 1-2, but he's like left hand or bust now. He never used to be. You know what I mean? He's like, he's kind of, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to say too much more, but yeah, I mean, if they're going to do a fourth fight, it's embarrassing in my opinion. Like, McGregor's just going to get beat again. I think Dustin opened a -240 favorite, hammer that line. McGregor's not beating Dustin. He's not beating Dustin. If he hits him, you know, he's, as I said, he can get the first round KO potentially, but they're just at a different level now. Dustin's here, McGregor's down here, you know. It is what it is. Dustin 240, I think there's value on that line, in my opinion. 350, something like that. Dustin wins this fight 80% of the time now. Yeah, not much more to say about that. Dustin versus Charles, that's going to be a very good fight. I don't know who I got in that one. Have to do tape. I will say that Charles is definitely live early, submission, knockout. But Dustin could pull away late. Dustin's battle tested, you know. Yeah, I could see him pulling away late. As for McGregor, as I said, I want to see him retire now, but it doesn't look like he's going to retire. Obviously, McGregor's delusional, right? Like I said this on my podcast last time. And the thing is, the delusion has helped him in the past, but I think it's actually hindering him now, you know, because he might actually believe that, you know, he's better than Dustin still when it was a fake win and stuff like this. And, you know, obviously the win, it wasn't like a stoppage, but like from what we saw in the first round, I mean, kind of clear that McGregor hasn't got it anymore. And obviously in the last fight, he got knocked out as well. So I hope McGregor retires, but I don't know if he will. I don't really want to touch too much on like what McGregor's been saying, but I did want to say that I'm real disappointed as a McGregor fan in like what he was saying after the fight. Now, I'm not disappointed. You know, people want to talk about like the stretcher talk and that. I don't think that's bad. You know, McGregor's saying Dustin's going to go out on a stretcher, which was ironic because McGregor ended up going out on a stretcher. That's crazy. But, you know, that people want to say that McGregor saying Dustin's going out on a stretcher is bad and that. Look, they're fighters, you know. This isn't ballet, right? These guys want to hurt each other at the end of the day, right? So I don't think saying you're going to go out on a stretcher is all that bad. You know, some people say that's bad. I don't think so. Dustin was really annoyed about that. But, man, it's a fight, man. Like, people are going to say that. Do you know what I mean? Like, these guys are getting in there. But what I will say is that what he said after the fight, right, about, like, killing Dustin and killing his wife is that's fucked up, man. And he didn't say, I'm going to kill you and your wife. What he said was, he was doing gun signs and he was like, it's not over. I'm going to get you. Even when you're in your bed, you and your missus, I'm going to get you. You know, so Basically, he's insinuating that while Dustin's sleeping, no, he said while you sleep. So he's insinuating that while Dustin's sleeping, he's going to kill him, and his missus. That's fucked up, man. I don't care the heat of the moment. At the end of the day, like, I give people passes way more than anyone, right? Like, I just talk about the stretcher thing. I said it's not that bad, right? I give people passes way more than anyone, right? Like, people will go crazy. I believe I'm super leaning on that sort of stuff because I understand that the emotions when you're in real life situations with people, right? I understand the emotions, right? And a lot of people don't understand that. So I give people a pass. But at the end of the day, you just got your ankle snapped, and you're basically saying that you're going to kill Dustin, you and your missus, while you sleep. Like, don't be talking like that, man. Like, the guy's losing it a little bit. You know what I mean? So I think he needs to really, like, check himself and just do some deep reevaluation, because all of the other stuff people are moaning about, don't really care too much. But, that was really disappointing for me to see as a McGregor fan, as a fan of MMA in general. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. I do hope Conor gets a help, just for the mental side of things. But yeah, man, it is what it is. It is what it is. That's it, guys. Wrapped up. Bang, done. Boom. I hope everybody had a good broadcast. Got a little bit tired towards the end of it. Sorry if I dropped off my energy level a bit, but I'll just catch up with the chat real quick. If you've got anything to say in the chat, please let me know. Earl Sweat saying he had the over 1.5 in a Hardy. Lol. Yeah, that's what it is, bro. Laugh out loud. Asphalt. Let's go, Lucrative. Sorry I'm late. No problem, bro. You got the end of it anyway. Don Q saying technical-wise, I think his range management also gotten worse. Got caught flat-footed by Poirer. Yes, maybe his range management, a lot of times in the past used to come from his kicks and his movement, right? But he doesn't have the same speed in his kicks. He doesn't throw the same kicks at all. And he also doesn't have the same movement anymore. So I think his range management is less of a technical thing and also more of a physical thing because of the movement. That's physical, right? And then he potentially can't do that movement consistently at the higher weight classes, and then also the kicks his arsenal is a lot less. Even in this fight, his kicks, he brought back the teep and the spinning back kick, but they wasn't as fast as they was in featherweight. It was decent, but it wasn't as fast as they was in featherweight. So, that basically created his range management, So I think that's an angle you can think about as well. Don Q saying McGregor has always been a narcissist. Now he's turning into sociopath as well. Yes, it already kind of hasn't ended well for him, but I feel like it could end really, really bad for him, which will be crazy to see, But I really hope he doesn't. I really hope someone gets in his ear and says, like, look, if you want to fight, man, fuck it. Let the guy fight, even though I don't think he should fight. But like when you start talking about, the in your sleep comments and that's a bit much, So I think that sort of stuff needs to be contained. If you want to fight, look, you're a grown man. You can do what you want. He still can beat a lot of lightweights out there, but I just don't think he can compete at the top level. Anyway, that's it, guys. Thanks for listening. If you did want to sign up and earn money from watching MMA, join me. I do it. I've been doing it for years. I've got multiple members that will vouch for me. I've made a lot of people a lot of money this year, last year, the year before. If you want to go to my Instagram page, follow me on Instagram. I do a lot of posts on Instagram. Go to my story highlights and check the reviews tab, right? I've got loads of reviews from people who are with me, members, and you can basically get an idea of my service from someone other than me. But if you did want to sign up, I'll leave all the links in the description here, links in the bio, lucrativemmabetting.com. We're up 61.9 units this year, which is just absolute crazy number. I'm going for the 100 unit year. If I get that, I'll be, over the moon. And what I'm going to do right now is go and tape some more fights. So thanks everybody for listening. Hopefully we can continue this unbelievable run we've been on this year. Regardless if you join me or not, good luck on all your bets. I want to see everyone win. That's it. Take care.